I have to say I don't do this very often, so I'm a little nervous. The other thing, they say that if you're over 50 miles away from home, they consider you to be an expert. And I'm not quite 50. I'm only about 20 or so away, and I don't necessarily consider myself an expert at this at all. I do like to study a lot, and I do like the soil, and I like a lot of the things that are in this kind of complex system that we call farming, and really would consider myself always wanting to learn. So today I've been asked to talk about my experiences with cover crops, and I want to share with you, I guess, the adventures in cover cropping from my perspective here today. If I can figure this out. Okay, I farm with my family. This is my wife, Jill. We've been married for about 20 years now. We have two daughters. My oldest over here, Nicole, 17, will be a junior at Western Boone High School. My youngest is Jenna. She's going to be my little farmer, I think. She's going to turn 15 next week, and she's going to be a freshman at Western Boone High School. I grew up in a little town just south of Tipton here. At that time, a little two-stoplight town called Westfield, Indiana, which now is not so much a two-stoplight town. But I grew up on our family farm over here. It's been in our family many generations. These are my parents, Ronald and Carolyn Chance, and my mom and dad have lived there for over 50 years and been married for over 50 years there. After I graduated from college and I'd actually started in the hog business, and we're still in the hog business in a small fashion. I worked off the farm for over 20 years at Excel Co-op as a swine production consultant and contract production manager. And we had slowly evolved our operation. We started with hogs is really how we had started our operation. My wife and I, after being married in 92, we established the farm that we live on now in Boone County in 93, where we built a hog operation. And we didn't actually start grain farming until 1997. So we've only been doing grain farming for 15 years, but it's always something that I wanted to do, I really enjoyed. I just had to kind of pay my dues to get there. And I do want to thank my parents. We were able to acquire land in Clinton County and also in Boone County. And I thank them for providing the land resources to allow the opportunity to farm. One of the things throughout the course of this whole idea of trying to get our soil health that I've come across, and we actually kind of use as a fairly big model in trying to develop our system, is the ideal physical properties of the soil. There's basically three properties within the soil. You have the physical characteristics of the soil, which is the tilth and how it feels and how it looks and how it acts. You have the chemical balance in the soil, which is a lot of the different minerals, and different, calcium and magnesium and sulfur and potassium, phosphorus, those different minerals balances. You have, and then you also have the biological portion. And we've heard a lot about the biological portion today in the soil. I kind of went through this on the Farmer Channel. We really feel like system drainage is sort of the first key in making this whole system work. I very much think that at every pickup, and I have an old pickup, we don't trade pickups on our farm. We don't graduate them down. So we've never really sold one. So my oldest truck is one that I'm just kind of attached to. It's just one of those weird things. But we always have these tools in the back of that old blue truck, and it's ready to fall apart. But we take those about everywhere we go, and it's really important to really get into those soils, dig into them, find out what's going on down there, and really that gives you a lot of clues on to what things are happening and what remedies you need to take to correct them. I touched on compaction and fertility, and I have to tell you a little story. We were very conventionally minded. And in 1996, we had started all this tile ditching. And as you know, it's hard to get drainage contractors sometimes. So when we get drainage contractors, we were ditching pretty much in the worst time of the year you could be. Typically in the winter, early spring, it's wet, it's snowing, it's frozen, it's muddy. and you gotta get this whole mess back together and get a crop plan in. And my, the neighbors that were ditching a lot that I had referenced earlier, they started planting wheat. And I thought, that's a good idea. What better time to ditch than after wheat? You know, when it's warm, you're not freezing, it's not going to be muddy. Which this year it's definitely not appearing like a ditching. We put the wheat in the rotation in 1996, and my dad and actually Tom Salke from Go Alliance had suggested that maybe we look at some Canadian clover. Throw some Canadian clover in when you top dress that urea on the wheat. It'll keep the weeds down, and it's not very much money, and it's kind of a cool thing. So we did that in 96, and, or not 96, 2006, I'm sorry. We did that in 2006, and it was kind of amazing what we actually saw in that. We'd taken the wheat crop off. We had a very high-yielding wheat crop that year, and under that wheat was this clover that was about probably 8 to 12 inches tall. Just a beautiful stand all the way across this field. And we were starting to see things out there in that field that we had not seen in our cropping system. Things that I'm not really attuned to seeing butterflies. But you walk out in this field and you have to almost do this to get through the butterflies. I don't really know what it meant, but it was different. And bees. We saw a lot of bees, which I don't like bees. I don't like the idea of being around a bee and getting stung. But there was a lot of different insects and different things in that field that we had not seen in the past. And it was very intriguing to me. And it was even more intriguing when I got my old blue truck and got the shovels out and started digging in that soil. And we were seeing earthworms. We were seeing white strands of stuff, which I didn't know at the time what those white strands of things were. But pretty sure that was mycorrhizal fungi kind of starting to, develop in those soils. So it was real exciting, and it's kind of one of those moments where we sort of have that light bulb go off type of moment, that aha moment. That was sort of our aha moment. And then the following year with the corn, we had half of the field we had ditched, half of the field we were going to do the following year. And there was a significant yield increase. And there was a lot of things that had gone on that year. We had done tiling, we had done the cover crop, we had made some soil amendments. A lot of things happened, but we had an aha moment. So we really got interested in cover crops at that point in time and experimented with different situations, different things for a few years. And within the last 3, we have implemented cover crops and tried to implement cover crops on a big portion of our acres. So a healthy biological system that is active and diverse is what bridges the gap between the physical and chemical properties of the soil. You can have the greatest physical properties, you can have everything balanced. But if that soil is dead and it doesn't have that biological diversity, that's the thing that bridges this thing together. And that's the thing that cover crops can do for you. So the complex marriage relationship that we have between the physical, chemical, and biological properties of the soil is really what led us on the journey to this whole cover crop thing. So we've had all these, why use cover crops? I guess this is kind of my list of why use cover crops. I think really, in all reality, probably the bottom 2 are probably the ones that I see as probably the most important. Those cover crop roots, once you have everything in that system kind of right, and you're putting those cover crops into your production system, those roots left undisturbed can really act as good channels. They can act as biological tillage. They can go deep into the soil profile, and they can capture nutrients, bring them back up to the top, kind of avoid some of the stratification we see with limited tillage, with nutrients and so forth. Significant water infiltration increases. And when you combine that with compaction relief, with system drainage, you really, really start creating a system that I think really at the end of the day is a tool that can really, it's a complex system. Conservation is a complex system. But the cover crops are a tool that I think can help create a high yield system that is going to be a sustainable system for a lot of years. And it's going to be, we've heard the word resilient, but I think it is true. It's resilient. It should be able to withstand a lot more pressure from drought, from insects, from weed populations and different things. Now, doing this whole farm cover crop system thing is definitely a management challenge. And in some cases, in the first year, it's a management nightmare. How do you do it? You know, I mean, there's a million different opinions and a million different ways to do it. And I'll have to say, I've worked closely with Cisco Seeds and Greg Downing when I really got interested into it, you know, in terms of talking about all the different ways to do this and so forth. But I couldn't do this without a great group of people. And I have a great group of people that I'd like to kind of share here. These three boys here, the one on the left is Seth Macy, and Seth has been with me since 1996. He's been with me approximately 16 years. And he's pretty much the guy that just makes it all happen around there. He takes care of all the equipment, he makes sure everything's running good, and he listens to my crazy ideas. And a lot of times he just does this. And I need that. So Seth has really been great. I couldn't do this without him. The boy in the middle is Cody Richardson, and Cody's he's a career firefighter at Zionsville and is a paramedic, and he helps me when we need extra help, typically in the spring and the fall. And the boy here on the very left is Tyler Hale. Tyler is a junior, will be a junior at Western Boone, and he's our neighbor, and he's a part-time summer help, and he is a lot of fun to have around. He's a good football player. He actually wants to be a doctor. He wants to go Northwestern, and can you imagine him being a pediatrician? I just can't quite. There's something about that that's not right. But anyway, we have a lot of fun together. A lot of you guys might recognize this gentleman in the room, some of you might not, but this is Bob Huber. And Bob, I worked for Bob back in college, and worked for him a short time after college before I was able to start my own operation. Bob farmed at Mom and Dad's farm in Westfield for over 20 years, and Bob retired in 2005 and has been helping me kind of in this cover crop journey here in the last 2 to 3 years. And without Bob, a lot of this would have not happened. Bob was a very progressive thinker. At the time that he was farming, a big no-till advocate, and he really believes in what we're doing on our farm. And I really appreciate his help, and I just really appreciate his leadership, and I couldn't do all the cover crop planning that I've done without Bob. The last boy here is Brock Timmons, and these are his two adopted brothers. And Brock has kind of a reason to be around here. He helped us also put cover crops in last fall. You see that little thing back there behind Brock? That's my oldest daughter. And so Brock kind of has an incentive to be around a little bit. So and he's really good, and he's going to be a freshman at Purdue next year. I want to show you, we've done a lot of experimenting. I love to experiment. And I'll have to tell you that not every experiment works. We have a lot of them that fail. And if people know where I farm, you're going to see a field or two this year that you would probably consider to be a failure because I've got it. And but a few things that we kind of see that work I want to kind of discuss today. When we start our no-till conservation type system, a lot of times we try to start that in wheat with some of these other processes. And what we like to do, this is an example. This is our four-way mixture of groundhog radishes, Austrian winter peas. I claim this winter hawk annual ryegrass, and I put in parentheses volunteer, and I will explain that. And Canadian giant mammoth clover. I told you the mammoth clover story. We've done that every year since we've done wheat, since 2006. And now what we're doing with that is we're trying to get that clover about ankle to knee high, typically by about the 1st of September, late August, September. And at that point, we're going through with a vertical tillage tool, and we're not really trying to kill that clover, because clover is hard to kill. Canadian clover is hard to kill. But we're trying to kind of chop that stuff and sort of green manure where it's not going to be terribly competitive. And then what we experimented with and we like and what we're doing is we're coming back in with a planter. We're actually using a 30-inch row John Deere 1770 planter. We're doing this a little harder. But we're putting in radishes at about 1.5 pounds per acre. And then we're coming back in and splitting the middles with peas at about 14 pounds per acre. And then you can kind of see all that grass in the middle of that. That's annual ryegrass that we had planted 2 years ago. And it's just the crop that just keeps on giving. It's just that gift that just keeps on coming and keeps on giving. Love what it does to the soil. Some disadvantages behind this stuff. You guys tried it on your farm, you be the judge of it. I have my opinions. This picture is that same field. This picture was taken, that would have been taken about the 20th of September. You can see the radishes. At that time, the Canadian clover was pretty prevalent. And right here you can kind of see a row of Austrian peas and some annual ryegrass out there as well. So again, we have a species diversity out there. In the year that we try to start the cover crops, we like to at least have 2 or 3 different species out there, because what's happening with those different species, it is like a super crop rotation. And a plant is just like a human. They produce excretes, okay? And those excretes come out their roots. They're called root exudates. And it's like sweat. And a lot of times they're full of sugars, they're full of different nutrients that different bacteria, different fungi just absolutely love. And you hear about a dead soil. Well, what's happening is there's nothing feeding those different, animals that are under your feet. And when you have different cover crops, you have those different root exudates that are feeding and turning on and stimulating those different fungi and bacteria. And it's a great way to what I would call biological supercharge a farm. And so we try to do that on this first year of this no-till journey. That's a picture of the same field taken right before Thanksgiving. Those are the radishes have obviously predominated in rows, and of course the annual ryegrass, the gift that just keeps on giving. And you can barely see the peas in the middle, but the clover at this point is pretty well choked out. That's my daughter Jenna, a little farm girl, and that's a picture of what one of those crazy things will be like if you plant them early, typically in like an August, late August time frame. That's a picture of the same field. That picture was taken on Valentine's Day. You can see that the radishes have frozen out, and actually in the ryegrass, it's still there. And the peas are actually have enough cover that they're predominating fairly well and fairly nicely through that as well. A little closer to the crop. So there's definitely a difference, and it's important to know that there are those differences. We cereal rye, we drill cereal rye in a fresh corn stalk before switching crop next season. This is what we use. This is what Bob Huber gets to drive. Matter of fact, he put 275 hours on that tractor last fall. He tells me we need a bigger drill, and he's probably right. So anyway, this is a picture, Barry is showing a picture of us planting some cereal rye that got a little out of control. This is a picture that was taken 2 years ago. It was actually April 14th of 2011. The cereal rye right behind our house. And by May the 13th, this is Tom Boyer. I think Mark, his brother, is with us today. Tom and Mark do some of my bean planting because we believe in this cover crop thing enough that we want our beans planted early, and we plant earlier varieties so that we can be harvesting in fairly early September, so we can have the opportunity to get a cover crop in that bean stubble. And we feel like our best yields have actually come from that system. So in order to get all the work done and try to do it timely, I do hire someone to be bean planting out. I appreciate Tom and Mark for their timeliness and the good job that they do. This is a picture, the last picture, that was May the 12th of last year. This was 7 days later. This stuff was pollinating at that time, and I was pretty leery about planting into that cereal rye that big. And I had not personally met Barry Fisher at that time, but I had been to a conference in Ohio, and there was a gentleman over there, his name was Howard Weller, and he'd been doing this for several years. And he absolutely told me, do not be afraid to do this. If you're getting ample rainfall or a lot of rainfall in the spring, Don't be afraid to do that. You'll be pleased with the results. You're going to take full advantage of the carbon that you just captured with that crop being that tall. And he says, trust me. So I trusted him right out my back window, and thought if I screw it up, I'm going to get to see that, and that'll stick in my memory bank for a long time. We sprayed that field 6 days after we planted it. That stuff was pollinating. I was getting pollen caught in my radiator right there. That is a picture of that same field 7 days later, which would have been, we've been up to the 20-something of May at that time, right before a storm had come through. And that's a picture of the same day of those beans coming through. There is a lot of residue, a lot of trash there. And if you remember last spring, unlike this spring, we had really large rainfall events. And we did not have ponding issues. This ground has sucked this up like a sponge. And we really started getting excited about what was going on in the soil. That's a picture of the same field that was taken. Greg Downick actually took that picture on June 21st. This is actually a picture that I took on July 4th of last year, right after a rain event. So we couldn't even see these beans until basically late June. You know, it was just stubble. And if you want to get the coffee shop fired up, that'll do it. That's a picture of beans. That's a picture of that bean field about mid-July, and that's a picture of pre-harvest. Actually, the day we started harvesting that, and we were quite pleased with the yield. They were our second best beans, and as a side note, the only time our sprayer went into that field for herbicide application was when we burned that down. We did foliar feed them one time, but the only time we had put herbicide in there was at burn down time. So there is definitely a synergy, or there must be allelopathic chemicals that go out to certain broadleaf weeds that just don't make them grow. There just must be a signal there that says, don't grow. It's not going to happen. They were very clean. We had a few ragweeds right there that kind of got away from us, but very minimal. So we went ahead and did it on a larger scale this year. We did over 1,000 acres this year of cereal rye. And this is a picture of a field that actually would have had, this is probably the 5th cover crop that's been in that field, that cereal rye, in the fall, taken about Thanksgiving time. Greg actually took this picture as well. We planted that field this year on April the 19th, or we drilled the beans there April the 19th. This picture was taken April the 24th. You can see what we did this year. We still drilled into it live, but because it was dry, and we knew it was dry, the soil was dry in March, we knew we needed to kind of make this happen a little quicker. We drilled into it. We sprayed it 24 hours prior to planting that or drilling that, and we drilled the field, and that is what the field looked like approximately 5 days after we had performed that process. This is a closer up picture of the mulch. It planted beautiful. I mean, it was just like planting into a garden. You were planting into earthworms, and we had this great mulch. We had great seed soil contact, and it was a very nice environment to plant soybeans into. This is a picture taken Tuesday of that same field of soybeans. You know, we're under drought stress, but I'm fairly pleased with the beans themselves. They're in the R2 stage right now in reproduction. They're flowering. I'm seeing little pods on some of the bottom nodes, and they're continuing to grow. They're finding water. I haven't got the backhoe or the shovel out there to dig and find out, but I'm definitely wanting to get out there and see what we got going on deeper underground. But one problem we got in this field, I'm sure some of you people in here that have no-till for a long time are experiencing this. I don't know what's going on with that, but that is some sort of a vole, a mole, a ground squirrel, a chipmunk, or something. And those things are all over those fields where we've got cereal rye. I'll open a suggestion on how to get rid of it. It is a problem this year, and one that I'm really not sure, you know, we have, but we haven't, and that's an extreme case of it. A lot of times it's a pretty small area. That's a really large area right there. We also tried cereal rye head of corn this year, corn on corn. And this is a field of cereal rye. That would have been, this actually has been our longest pure no-till field. This is our 5th year of no-till. And this was a corn crop last year, expanded into cereal rye. And this is a few days after we had killed the cereal rye in early April. This is a picture of me planting into this cereal rye field. This is corn on corn. The conditions were perfect when we planted it, just absolutely perfect. And I thought this might work. We tried to kill that cereal rye very early because we'd always heard about the allelopathic effects and tying up the nitrogen, and we worked really hard to try to kill it early, broadcast ammonium sulfate, and also it had about 50 units of nitrogen on with our planter. And thought we really had things figured out there. Well, a few days after we planted it, if you can see, that's a pretty good rainstorm right there. And that was actually our last good rain event. That happened on May the 1st. And my wife snapped that picture out of her car. And you don't really see any water ponding right there at all for a very large rain event. We had just planted the field a few days before that. Right across the road, that's the field right across the road. So when you talk about infiltration, that's conventional. That's no-till with cover crop. That really hit home to me. Now, I will have to say, grass on grass. We've talked about picking cover crops. I have several acres that is cereal rye. It was corn on corn, and we've done that in. This corn is under a tremendous amount of stress, and more so than where we have rotated either legumes into the rotation or have soybeans with the cover crop. I think the grass on grass, at least for us, is something we're probably going to try to stay away from in the future. We still show pretty good color in this, but this corn just is stressed. And my theory is that there is nitrogen tie-up, and I think there are other allelopathic chemicals that are in this grass on grass thing that you just can't explain. And so I'm a little hesitant to do a lot more acres with cereal rye, or for that matter, annual ryegrass, corn on corn, things like that for some of the effects that we've seen on that. And I think without the moisture, this field would have been fine. But it's been under stress, and it's been the longest one that's been under stress. So we'll see what happens. The next one that we really like is when we get our beans off, we started, and I heard Rodney talk at several of these events, and I heard different people talk about the precision planting situation. So we tried that, kind of the same thing we did in the wheat. Basically wrote the radishes, came back in and split the middles with the peas. We also added crimson clover. We wondered, how are we going to add this crimson clover? Because I love crimson clover. When crimson clover gets big enough and actually matures, when you take that shovel and dig that up, the soil that basically is around those roots, it just clings to those roots, and it's really tilting, and you find a whole bunch of earthworms, and it's like I call it a flower pot plant. It's just beautiful stuff to plant into. So we're trying to figure out how to do it. So on an experimental basis, we again got radishes, peas, and then there's crimson clover basically broadcast throughout the middles there. And those pictures were taken about Thanksgiving as well. So that's about the amount of growth we've got out of the radishes. And they got killed off on a freeze about the 1st of December. Got froze off, and they don't look real impressive. But Rodney had showed you a picture of something that was about the same size, but had a taproot that had really gone deep. And I didn't think much of that until we were soil testing that field this spring. And I could take that soil probe, and I could be anywhere through here, and I had resistance. But man, when I hit one of those radish rows, even though that doesn't look impressive, I just buried that thing. There was no resistance in that row whatsoever. So that tap going down like that, I really think could provide some biological tillage. And the need for that steel, the need for that deep ripper to get down there and break through those deep compaction layers, I really think a radish, in a lot of cases, doesn't have to be the size of, a state fair winning radish to really get down there and do a good job with compaction. Now, how do we broadcast that clover? Well, this is a little old school. We use the 40-20 power shift. Best $500 ever spent right there on a herd broadcast seeder. And then we took a undergrowth rolling tube basket, and we had this little train hooked up. We had the 3-point with the cedar, and then we extended the hitch out on the basket and was pulling that basket behind it. Broadcasting the clover, and the rolling basket was just doing nothing but kind of fluffing it and getting that seed down in the soil. So we had a nice stand. And again, the boys really liked running that 40-20. It was fast. We were able to get, I think we figured out we were doing about 65 acres an hour with that. So you could get a lot of ground covered. It was kind of old school, no auto steer, you know. Good times, good times. That's a picture of that same field. That was taken in late March. You can see the peas had made it through the winter and done very, very well. And in the middles there, you can see, you can't see that picture real well. My daughter took out the tripod. And there's clover in there, crimson clover, and also the crop that just keeps on giving. You can kind of see there's annual ryegrass in there. So right there's that crop that keeps on giving. That's another photo of it with the peas and clover. Radishes have died off, and that nice annual ryegrass. Now, another combination that we tried 2 years ago and we really liked, the field that I showed you a few slides ago with the corn that was really stressed, okay? This was that same field 2 years ago. And I would say biologically it's probably one of my strongest fields. We've been in the no-till the longest. We have the most diversity in our soils, the most earthworms. And 2 years ago we had used, in 2010, the fall of 2010, we had drilled groundhog grasses and Austrian winter peas into that field. Thought we just wrote it off in 2010 because it never rained, and it didn't come up very good and things, but the peas came up in the spring. You remember 2011, in the spring, we had some rain, and they came up, and things got going pretty good. And really, by the time we were ready to plant, this is a picture of those same peas right after we had sprayed them with glyphosate and Chardon. They're looking a little sick. They were about ankle high, and I don't have the picture of the nodules, but they had huge clusters of nodules on them, huge clusters. This is a picture of that corn probably about 2 weeks after I'd taken that picture of the peas dying. We had a really nice stand of corn in there. You can see the carcasses of the peas. The chemistry did a great job kind of frying those down. And there wasn't a whole lot of residue to deal with there. We had a nice stand of corn in there, and that field was one of our hillier corn fields by the site of looking at it. That was our second highest yielding field of corn last year, with limited August rainfall. The other one that we really like in bean stubble, going ahead of corn, is oats, groundhog radishes, and crimson clover. And this picture was taken on a farm up just west of Antioch in Clinton County. Would have been taken in late March of 2011. You can see the oats had died off, and the radishes had died off as well, but we had a pretty nice stand of crimson clover. If you remember 2011, it got kind of wet on us, and we didn't get the crop in, as early as what we did this year. So that crimson clover went from that, basically at the end of March, to that by about the middle of May. And we had just a beautiful stand of crimson clover over that whole field. And again, it was exciting to get in there with a shovel and dig that stuff. I mean, it was just flower pot soil. And it was taking big rains, and it was exciting. That's a picture of corn after emergence, about 2 weeks after it emerged. And that's a picture of the crimson clover there in the middle after it died. And it had not thoroughly died at that point. We had stunted it, but we had not killed it. The chemistry we used did not totally kill it. It was Liberty Link corn, so we were able to come back in with Liberty and actually 2 ounces of Latus. It totally took care of it on the post-emergent pass. That was our highest yielding field of corn, and that really convinced me multi-species cover crops with a legume ahead of corn is really something that we're going to work hard to employ on our farm. Now, corn on corn. I talked about these grasses. I keep talking about annual ryegrass and gift keeps on giving, and some of these things. We raise some continuous corn. We're about 2/3 corn, about 1/3 beans. So you've got this year in between, and it's really difficult from a time timing standpoint to figure out something that's going to work in there. And I preferably would like to have a brassica or lagoon put into that slot. So, you know, we've done this mammoth clover thing in the wheat since 2006, and it's worked. And I haven't felt like it's been a competitive situation. I thought, you know, it probably will work in corn. And I talked with Greg and some other people, and we thought we'd give this a try. I've done a little bit of work, or a little research, you know, about going into standing corn around B6 and broadcasting this giant mammoth clover and trying to establish a living mulch basically within that corn that would be synergistic to the corn and not allelopathic. So we did this the 1st of June, and I'm guessing that's an experiment that probably is not going to work until we get some water. So probably wasn't the greatest year to try it, but I think those are some things that in my mind in the future I would like to try to establish and see if we can come up with something that we are comfortable using, that we know is going to work and be a staple in our operation, where we can have a living cover of a diverse species all the time. That's another picture. Again, this is kind of old school. I mean, you know, you're going down those roads with no auto steer. So, this is a picture of the clover broadcast. We worked a little bit to set that up, where we try to get an even broadcast. And again, that's going to be totally moisture dependent on getting it to work. Not looking good this year, but we'll continue to probably do some of these experiments. Some of the other things I'd like to try, lupins. It's a legume. There's other things I'd like to try. I'd like to try maybe dwarf Essex rape, possibly Sudan grass in behind wheat as a quick cover, quick bacterial sugar take cover, and then followed by something different. We just want to continue to try to figure out these things. We definitely don't know everything. We're learning all the time. It's trial and error. It's a lot of fun, and I thank you guys for listening to it.